The meeting is called back to order at 6:42. Please rise and the clerk will lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I have a motion and a second that the agenda of October 3rd, 2023 be approved as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Board members, questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Board members, questions? No? Okay. All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? We are on special reports.
We are. So we have one special report this evening, an external audit presentation from Mr. Tom Zuber. Come on down. Tom, there is a clicker there that should work, and we've got your slides loaded up.
All right. Can I stand or sit down?
You can sit down. Be comfortable.
Happy to stand. Great, good evening. Thank you here for inviting me here tonight. Is this on?
I believe so.
All right. So thank you for inviting me here tonight. As I'm here to just present or talk a little bit about the June 30th, 2023 basic financial statements, so the audited financial statements of the school district. I have some slides in front of you this year. Again, the basic financial statements, the management letter, internal control communication, should have received those in your board packets. There's a lot of very good information in those documents, about 62 pages long. So, you know, a lot of key information. Certainly, within the basic financial statements, there are some significant areas to pay attention to. The first being the audit opinion, right, which is an unqualified opinion and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So that's really where you want to be when it comes to the basic financial statements. Also included in the financial statements is what's called a management discussion and analysis. And again, that's a nice summary of what took place during the year. Talks about some you know, budget variances, some year-over-year variances, talks about factors that impact the school district going forward. And really the idea is that if you read through that management discussion and analysis, you'll have a basic understanding of some of the key items that took place over the years. So the intent is to provide the reader with some plain language summary of the financial information. So, you know, there are other statements, the numbers in there, certainly a lot of good information in that. But we did review those financial statements with the audit committee back on September 28th, so last week. We had a nice discussion with the audit committee talking about some of those year-over-year variances, talked about the budget variances, reserves and fund balance, internal controls, checks and balances. So very nice discussion with the audit committee. And again, the financial statements are really the result of a budget process that you started almost 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And within those 2 years, there's certainly been a lot of unique situations that happen, right? And so districts really continue to face those challenges. You know, I'm sure the state aid uncertainty is out there. You know, I know the foundation aid has been made whole, but, you know, we're not hearing a lot of really positive things out of the state right now in terms of their budget situation. Certainly the property tax cap continues to be challenging for school districts, employee benefits, inflation, and even the federal stimulus funds, right? So you received, as a result of COVID, some significant federal dollars, but those dollars are really one-time dollars, and eventually they go away, right? And then how do you deal with those dollars when they go away? So those are some of the challenges that school districts face on an ongoing basis, not only this school district, but all school districts. But you continue to be in good financial condition. Okay, and we talked a little bit about that with the audit committee. Really, it all starts with the long-term planning and the development and utilization of reserves, and the district does a very good job as it relates to those programs. You know, you continue to be in strong health. You know, there's a quick summary of the different reserves that you have, but a couple of the key reserves that are out there, really the employee retirement, the teacher's retirement contribution reserves, and those are reserves that are really designed to help offset any spikes in the contribution rate. So very positive reserves to have out there. You know, the state identifies the rates that you pay, right? And those rates have been as high as 25% of your salaries, and been as low as like 0.004 or 0.4% of the salary. So they've been very low. So they do go up and down, so that rate, that contribution rate, can vary. So these reserves are there to help steady any of those spikes. The other big capital reserve that you have is the capital reserve. Again, the districts utilize those reserves over the years, so they're very important reserves to have. You know, they really help support the local portion of projects, right? So it helps reduce the tax impact on any of those long-term plans. So really the district has done a very good job in developing and utilizing the reserves. And again, as a result of the year-end financial condition, the district was able to allocate a little over $4.9 million into the reserves, okay? And then you also used a little over $1.7 million of the bus reserve, so you allocated those dollars over for some bus purchases. So you are utilizing some of those reserves. You know, one of the other items that the district did as a result of the year-end financial condition, if you recall, the board approved allocating some excess dollars over to the capital project in lieu of issuing debt. So again, a very positive move that the district has done, saying we're going to utilize some of the surplus this year to reduce future debt that you have to issue. So, you know, you're going to save significantly on interest earnings, right? Or I'm sorry, interest costs, right? As well as costs associated with the debt issuance. So very positive. Certainly will generate some cash inflow from state aid, right? Because you'll have, you know, the debt service will have gone down, but you'll still get the same state aid on those expenditures. So again, very, very positive move from the district as part of the year-end financial strategy. So a lot of good things happening from a financial statement standpoint. We talked a little bit about the federal stimulus dollars, right? So again, you received about $1.9 million, or you spent about $1.9 million in the current year of the federal stimulus dollars. And as you know, there's a couple different programs out there. The CARES funds are basically over. You've got the Krista funds that are ending right now, the fall of 2023, and the ARPA funds that will end next year. Okay, so the three different programs are coming to the end, and you know, fortunately, the district did develop a plan where you did spend quite a bit of that stimulus money on one-time type expenditures, right? So not reoccurring expenditures, but you do have some of those reoccurring costs that you'll have to take a look at and make sure you have a nice plan, which you do to bring those costs back to the general fund, right? Because when those stimulus dollars go away, any of those costs that are being paid out of there that the district wants to continue to utilize those programs will have to come back to the general fund. Okay, so you do have a plan for that. So just a couple of the key things with regard to those stimulus dollars. Again, because when they end, those expenditures need to go someplace if you want to continue those. Okay, So that's some of the key items we talked about. The school lunch program, again, that's another fund that the school district continues to do very well from one year to the next. The challenge is that unfortunately we have to criticize you for doing such a good job in terms of the federal regulations out there. They want to see you try and keep that balance around 3-month average, which is one of the 2 procedural items that we talk about in the internal control communication. So that communication really is a review of the different checks and balances that you have over your financial cycles. And so that internal control communication communicates any procedural recommendations and mentioned there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. It's really where you want to be, okay? But a couple procedural items just to enhance the checks and balances that you currently have in place. So again, overall, you ended the year in very good financial position. A few minor procedural items to enhance what you're currently doing. And you do have a very nice long-term plan in place relating to the reserves and fund balances. Okay? Any questions?
Board members, questions?
Tom, could you just let our community members know what CRRSA stands for and the ARP, please? Do you remember?
So it is.
And I'm sorry if I'm throwing you on the bus.
Yeah,
Dan's
you are,
gonna say. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Coronavirus
Yes.
Relief and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act.
Perfect. And what
Yes.
about the ARP?
That's the American Rescue Plan.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. These acronyms,
Mhm.
yeah, they really
They confuse all of us. So.
Oh, good. It's not just me. Fabulous. Great. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Student representative report. Hi, Helen.
Before we do the report, we actually have to do the oath.
Yes.
Oh,
Yep,
okay,
we're
I'm so
gonna do
sorry.
the oath,
Yep.
yes. Are you ready? I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Student Representative of the Board of Education
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Student Representative of the Board of Education
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
Thank you so much. And then you had something to tell us?
Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Broikos. I am the new student representative. Before I jump into my report, a little bit about me. I'm currently a junior at Penfield High School. It wasn't so long ago that I was attending Indian Landing. I am an active member and occasional officer of many clubs at PHS. I have to admit that this is the extracurricular that I'm most excited for. I'd like to take a moment to thank the board members for having me. You've been all so kind, and this is such an enormous opportunity, and I'm so thrilled to be taking on this role.
Welcome.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Into the report. District-wide updates, there are a couple. I'm sure all of you are aware that there is a 4-day weekend for students at the end of this week, which many people are looking forward to. And October is National Principals Month, so I just wanted to thank all of our hardworking principals that make Penfield schools as amazing as they are. For PHS, Girl Up is a club in our school that is partnering with the Ugandan Water Project to raise money for a rainwater well for a school in Uganda, which I think is kind of awesome. Socktober has started, which the Student Council is arranging a fundraiser where PHS students are donating unused socks, all of which go to charity at the end of this month. Rehearsals for the play, Send to Me No Flowers, have begun. And the club fair took place on Friday and gave students a chance to explore the clubs offered to them. Many sports teams have been doing exceptionally well, including volleyball, soccer, field hockey, golf, swim, and football. And college visits are in full swing from schools around the Rochester area and beyond. For Bay Trail, the 8th graders are participating in the school fundraiser for the Washington, D.C. trip. And the modified girls swim team made team history when they won 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place in 3 out of 10 events. Additionally, the courtyard has a new playground that many students are very excited to use during lunch. Scribner, tomorrow night, all of the 5th grade classes will be going to RBTL to see the production of Frozen that's going on there. If I was in 5th grade, I'd be very excited for that. At Cobbles, students and families enjoyed the fun run, which ended with Principal Nicole Whitehead and Assistant Principal Mariana Berry duct taped to the wall. At Indian Landing, they're starting a new tradition of Sunday night read-alouds, where staff are reading students' favorite books every week. And at Harris Hill, many students are enjoying participating in clubs like Run Club, Intramurals, Conservation Club, the Student Connection Team, and Safety Patrol. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay.
So Helen, I'm really happy that you're here. I know you couldn't be with us last meeting, and I enjoyed it because I got to read your report and take all the credit for it. You'll get used to my old joke every time after you present that your presentation outshines mine. The only thing I have is I have pictures, so that's why I win. But you did a wonderful job as your first time presenting and giving a sort of a detailed overview of many of the things happening in our district, so thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for superintendent's reports, I do have a couple of student staff honors, just a little update on homecoming, and then business updates I'll turn over to Dr. Driffill. And so many of our music students made NYSSMA area All-State, and congratulations to the students who were selected to participate in the area All-State festivals in November. There are names here and in your agenda. I won't read through all of them, but both from our high school and for the senior high and for the junior high. So again, congratulations to all of our students. Again, it's a testament to the amount of first, I always say this, it's not musical talent, it really is musical hard work, because there's very few people who just are born ready to just play everything and at the caliber they can, but a lot of work from our students and our staff supporting, so congratulations to our students. There are some commended students. Congratulations to the following PHS students who've been named as commended students in the 2024 National Merit Scholarship Competition. Kala Douglas, Leah Omrachea, John Paremba, and Andrew Taddeo. Commended students rank among the top 50,000 students nationwide based on their performance on the PSAT NMSQT exam. So a huge piece in terms of the number of hundreds of thousands of students who take that test and to be ranked among the top 50,000. So again, congratulations to our students. Kudos to the members of the PHS baseball, wrestling, and girls tennis teams for helping set up and take down the annual big book sale at the Penfield Public Library. Team members transported, loaded, and unloaded boxes of books, as well as set up and took down tables for the sale. Great job. Just one of our many partnerships we have here as our district with our town, especially in this case, our Penfield Public Library. Yesterday was School Custodian Appreciation Day, and we just want to say thank you from the district and the Board of Education to our amazing custodians for taking care of our building, students, and staff every day. We couldn't do it without you. There are a lot of unsung heroes in public school. Our custodians and cleaners are absolutely in that group, so please make sure to say thank you and show appreciation. And I just think back to our August board meeting and and our first September board meeting where we showed images of what the buildings look like before and after preparing. And so just the amount of work it goes in to make our buildings look the way they do inside. And I just would tell you that I've worked in a lot of schools. I go to a lot of schools for my job, and I'm always in awe of walking into Penfield in terms of what it looks like, because that first appearance really does mean a lot, and that really is kudos to our custodians and cleaners throughout the district. Is also, see, this is where, Helen, you did a much better job presenting, but I have pictures, so that's all I have. But it's National Principals Month, so October is National Principals Month. Proud to recognize these amazing individuals who lead with passion, who always put students first. You are appreciated, and we have a picture of each of our building principals, and I know from speaking to them, they would go ahead and push that thanks out to their assistant principals in their buildings, as well as all of our staff. So again, congrats, and thank you to our principals. Just a couple homecoming comments really through photos. This event was, I think it might have been one of the best I've ever attended. Were you there, Helen? So it was very, very crowded. I think there was over 12 food trucks. The lines weren't that bad, but really this shift that's been going on, really when Dr. Maloney, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, was principal, really this push to make it a community event, and that continues to build every year. So while it is a homecoming game played by varsity and JV and our teams, that one evening is really trying to bring the whole community out, and there were students from all of our grade levels and families. I had my kindergartner there, who I was surprised, but made it all the way through the night, including, for the first time in decades and decades, the fireworks that ended the homecoming event, and they were really amazing to see. So just again, thank you for our students for excellent behavior and following rules, and for our families that came out, and for the number of staff who have volunteered and helped support our students. So again, there's some of the firework photos. All of the photos I took don't look like that great firework photo. Every time I see fireworks, I take pictures, and I'm like, why did I take all these pictures? Because it's not very good on my phone. But again, a great night all around. And again, I have to say thank you to our elementary PTSAs who help with the kids zone for the face painting and the games and everything else. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Driffill for business updates.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Putnam. Good evening, board. Helen, welcome. Couple business updates, approvals that are on your agenda this evening that we'll walk through. First of which are 2 change order approvals. There is 1 credit on there, and there's 1 new cost. The new cost item is actually for abatement at Indian Landing, the same issue that we discovered this summer. So of the 10 rooms that we did this year, 7 needed abatement. Of the 10 rooms next year, it's just 2. So it's just the 2 rooms reflected in tonight's change order. We wanted to secure that pricing now to ensure that they were ready to go for as soon as we can get them in there. We have a service contract approval. This is something we do every year with Our Lady of Mercy. So we're the lead education agency. They utilize their federal funds to contract with Sylvan for tutoring for their students there, but that flows through us, so we always seek board approval based on the cost being more than $20,000. We have 2 audit approvals, so the first of which I'll review in a little bit more detail in a moment. We heard from Mr. Zuber tonight, that external financial audit that we do every year. And then there is associated corrective action for 2 findings that they put in the management letter. And then we also have, we're seeking approval for our internal audit, which is the process audit. This year, the scope of that audit, which I'll review, was our facilities use policies and procedures. We have on the docket for this evening a land surplus approval, which I'll discuss a little further. And then annually, after our first audit committee meeting of the year, we have the board reauthorize the charter. In the charter itself, we say that the committee will review it, and then the board will reauthorize the charter. We do the same thing with our health and safety charter. So as we heard from Mr. Zuber, it was a positive financial year for the school district. We generated a small operational surplus. As he mentions in that 60-page report, it kind of just boils down to the fact that reserves increased about $3.5 million. He said $4.9 million were put in, $1.7 million came out, to bring us up to total reserves of about $30.5 million. And then we have unassigned fund balance and assigned fund balances as well, but that's kind of that number that we look at to see, like, kind of, what money's in the bank. And I have a slide to speak to that $30.5 million in a second as well. The management letter, as Mr. Zuber noted, had 2 recommendations, the first of which is a prior year recommendation. So we had the same note last year that food service fund balance level is too high in the eyes of the federal government. So what they want to see is they want to see 3 months worth of average sales as fund balance, and we're about $200,000 higher than that. I think our fund balance is about $850,000 or so, and we're supposed to be sort of in the $650 range. So like last year in our August meeting, we had a planned deficit for that budget for the food service fund. So we utilized in the budget a fund balance utilization of $170,000. That didn't work last year. We still were able to have a good year financially. 2 years prior, when we were developing that budget, inflation was still really high, cost of goods were still really high. We had just given out wage increases for food service staff, so we were really just trying to break even, and we ended up just about breaking even. So it was a good financial year. If you think back to August, we did not increase our lunch rates. We kept on the same this year. And then the other new thing that we're going to look at to try to spend that down a little bit this year is one-time expenditures on like capital expenditures, so capital equipment, kitchen equipment, things like that. The other recommendation noted was that process audit, so procurement processing. So our procurement regulation and policy says we'll always use a purchase order when we do purchases as a district. It has been our practice that for some items we've never issued a purchase order. So one of the examples cited in the report was our BOCES contract. So in the budget development process, we indicate to BOCES how much services we want, how many kids we think are going to attend certain programs, and then we sign a contract with BOCES. They send us an invoice every month, we pay that invoice. The recommendation was saying that we should really be issuing a purchase order to BOCES, even though the month-to-month fluctuations of the contract change. So it's not something that would be impossible to implement, but it's something in terms of policy that we want to look at to maybe allow these direct pays when they might be appropriate, when a purchase order would be not feasible. Another one of the recommendations cited was the day before school started, one of our principals realized they were out of something, they needed something for a student or staff member, they ran to the store. It was run by our purchasing agent to ensure that the cost was okay. They had the sales tax certificate, they didn't pay sales tax, but they would have had to put a purchase order in for this principal to be reimbursed, and it was just one of those things that was up against timing-wise. There's another scenario by which utilities, we don't usually put in a purchase order for natural gas, electric, sewer, things like that because the rates fluctuate, they change. It's hard for us to predict exactly what it's going to be. And then most of the time we would just be changing the purchase order anyway. But as noted in the report, we are supposed to use a purchase order for all purchases. So we'll take a look at that regulation at some point this year to ensure that if we should be issuing a purchase order, we will, or allow direct pays in certain situations. I did want to just quickly touch on that reserve number. So what this is a chart of Monroe County school districts with their reserve levels as a % of their expenditure budget. So we're at about $30 million on a $117 million budget, which leaves us somewhere around 26%. That's like the exact average for the Monroe County school districts. You can see that some have fund balance levels up to almost 90%, or one of them does. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have one that's maybe just a little over 10%. There is no stated reserve guidance from the state how much money a school should have in reserves, and we note that in our reserve plan that we review every year. But just, I always try to contextualize things, because when you say you have $30 million in the bank, what does that mean relative to other districts? And what this shows is that we're kind of right in the middle of the road, right in the middle of the pack. So we probably don't have too much money in the bank, and we also probably don't have too little. So then the other audit that we need to review this evening is our internal audit. So this is the one that we also have to do annually that looks at our practices, our regulations, our procedures. This year, the audit committee decided to take a look at facilities use. The review found no findings or recommendations. All the paperwork was appropriate. All of the entities that utilize our facilities were charged appropriately. It did present some benchmarking comments relative to our existing policies and processes, specifically around the fact that we have an application fee. That was noted to be an uncommon thing across the county. We have high insurance thresholds relative to some of our neighboring districts, which can be arduous for some groups that want to use our buildings to try to, attain those policies through expensive premiums. We have some duplicative rules within the one policy and 5 regulations that govern facilities use, so there might be some room to streamline those. The cost structure was not comparable to county districts. On most scenarios, we were far cheaper, far less costly. We don't charge for gyms, for instance. There was a couple examples cited, so that's something that we'll take a look at. And then it was noted in the report that there would be a benefit of moving to an electronic system. We currently do everything by paper. When somebody's out on vacation, that approval gets held up on their desk. It's just a little bit of a slower process. So that is something diligence-wise that we've looked into. But again, no findings in this report, so there was no need for associated corrective action. Just some general benchmarking. And then we also have on the agenda this evening a resolution for the board to consider that would formally dispose or surplus the Atlantic Avenue property that Dr. Putnam referred to at our last meeting. So all this does is recognize the fact that that ownership of the land no longer serves the educational mission of the district. So it doesn't do anything except for remove it essentially from our balance sheet as an asset. It's the same thing we would do for an unserviceable textbook, that it's no longer in use for the organization, and that we're taking a look to surplus and dispose it. It doesn't put us on the hook for any future action. We could always put it back on the books if we wanted to. This would just be the first step if the board wanted to move forward with other kind of possible solutions in the weeks and months ahead. And those are all of the action items relating to business updates tonight. Any discussion?
Board members' questions? Mark?
Thank you, Dan. You were talking about the reserves and where we are, in terms of on that graph compared to their peers. And not too much, not too little. Is the county, or I should say, is the state still doing fiscal stress tests? And when was the last time we had one?
Yep. So the state comptroller's office has a report that they do that for all school districts, and they do it for all New York State municipalities, so towns, villages, counties as well. They do that annually. We typically review that when it comes out. It's usually in the spring, sometime during the budget development process. Since that report went into effect 7 or 8 years ago, we've never had any fiscal stress designation. We've always been having none. But it's an annual thing. It's available online. You could look up the town, the school, any other municipality. But yeah, we will review it again come spring.
And the reason I ask that is because, again, there's always that, it's that sweet spot between having too much in reserves and just hanging on to more money than we should. Now, we have capital projects that are underway, so that's why that affects that. And then not having enough in case something goes wrong. And that's, again, why the stress test is, and as you said, we haven't had any problems with that. So that's the last one. So again, I think that just reaffirms where we are.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I have a question about the purchasing orders.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been a time when the categories that you mentioned, I think you gave like the example like BOCES or like the gas and electric, has there ever been a time when purchasing orders had been filled out for those type of payments? And
yeah, not that we can see, at least going back a while. And I should also be clear that all the payments cited were proper. They were required. They were reviewed by multiple parties. We, our accounts payable clerks review everything against the invoices. Then we have the internal claims auditors that further review their work. It was just a matter of whether or not those dollars should have been formally set aside prior to the expense.
okay, and also, and the purchasing, that's electronic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Tom, This is National Principals Month, and that's wonderful. Is there going to be a National Assistant Principals Month? Because now we have assistant principals
Yeah.
who also do a lot of work.
I laughed, not at the idea, but
Uh-huh.
because earlier today, Nancy Bradstreet, our Director of Communication, Kathleen Zastro, our amazing district clerk and board clerk, we were joking in terms of how many days there are. So, like I said, is there a national superintendent conference, like day? Do I get a day? But I guess it's conference. So the answer is, I don't know off the top of my head if there's an assistant principal day.
Okay.
But there's a day for just about everything. And if there is one, we will absolutely reference it at the
Okay.
board meeting. And
All right.
but I will just take that as like, we haven't had, April 3rd to 7th, 2023. But I will be honest, be careful, because we also learned today, depending on what site you go to, they have different days. So maybe it's April 1st to 5th, 2024. Thank you, Dr. Potter, that was fast. And we did notice though, like, some of the days are like, depending on where you look, it can be, but, so yes, if there is one, we'll absolutely do that.
Perfect.
But I think where you're going with that is just, again, the kudos to our assistant principals. We have had assistant principals at our secondary schools for years. We've never had them at our elementary schools until this year, and it really is a dream team. Each assistant principal brings, their own skill set, and it really mirrors well with the current building principal. And so it's amazing to watch it happen. One of the, just examples in speaking with one of our elementary building principals, just a piece to have someone else to bounce ideas off of, bringing new ideas in, questioning like, well, having someone say like, well, we've always done it that way, but why, right? And so just really, it's been fascinating to watch that. And even Helen referenced, the principal and assistant principal at Cobbles being duct taped to the wall because they made over $25,000 for that fun run for the PTA. And I have a kindergartner who knows the name of the assistant principal, not because he's been in trouble, but again, they really have become part of that culture and community in just a short time.
Yeah.
All of our assistant principals at the elementary and secondary levels were at homecoming to be there, watching elementary kids see their assistant principal and go running up. And it really has been great, and appreciative, I know the principals are of the board for supporting the budget that allows for the assistant principals. So we'll talk about that again.
Perfect.
April 1st to 5th, 2024.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
With time off for the eclipse.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, that's break. Yeah, but maybe before or after. Thank you.
Nicole?
This is just a curiosity question, Dan. The kinds of people that use our property, what kind of organizations rent?
Our facilities use?
Yeah.
Oh, so we have dance clubs, dance recitals, we have Boy Scouts, we have different athletic organizations,
Square dancing.
square dancing, youth basketball.
Okay.
They're by and large, nonprofit community type of arrangements. But there's
Mostly the gyms or?
Yep, gyms, auditoriums, cafeterias, sometimes a classroom, sometimes just the fields.
Mhm.
Yep.
No, I just wanted to say I appreciate the visual for the general funds. I think that, because that was
Yeah.
my big question in the audit, like how much do we have? What does that look like in comparison to other districts? I think I'm a visual person, so I think it's important for the community to see that we're not way up here and we're not also here, so that we can maintain our.
I know Tom mentioned it and Dan did as well. It's one of the pieces I always come back to is the, when we are audited by the comptroller, they've never in any district anywhere said you had the right amount of
They're not,
reserves.
yeah,
So
they're
it's
not
either
going
too
to.
much or not enough, and that's the piece I always look at. Well, we have a, $117 million budget. If you take that and, none of us have that kind of budget at our house, but you want to have that savings. You want to have that reserve for if something happens. And, we have a long history, I know the board is aware, and for the community, a long history of that fiscal responsibility and making sure that we're supported, and then the ability to utilize the reserves for future purchases, like a bus reserve and for capital project reserve. So it's definitely, I see districts where if they don't have the reserves and they need to do something like buy buses or capital projects, they have to go out and really raise the levy in order to make that happen. And we try not to do that. Doesn't mean we can always do that, but it's really that fiscal responsibility and trying to be thoughtful for it.
Board members, any other questions? Okay.
That concludes superintendent reports.
Okay, board members, we are on 6A, change orders. Oh, no.
5A.
You skipped.
Oh, did I? Oh, I did. I apologize. We haven't had. Okay, so public comment, I apologize. We have one person up for public comment. I just want to read this. We as a board appreciate the comments of the community during the public session of the board meeting. Every individual that speaks has a vested interest in the education of our students. Your comments are important to us. Concerns raised will be referred to the district administration for follow-up or action when appropriate. Community members may sign up to speak at a meeting by emailing District Clerk Kathleen Zastro with their name, address, phone number, and topic they wish to address. Finally, we ask that all speakers model the conduct we expect from our students in school daily. Individuals who choose to participate in the public comment period should note that they agree to and are bound by the terms outlined in Policy 1515, which includes conducting themselves in a civil manner consistent with the District Code of Conduct, refraining from comments related to specific personnel or students, including names or other identifiable information such as job titles, grade levels, schools, etc., and refraining from libellous or slanderous, I said that wrong, statements, obscene language, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice. Please be respectful of others in your words, conduct, and demeanor. Thank you. And that was my first time saying it, so I wanted to be able to say it because we've never had anyone comment before, or since the beginning of the year. So, Jackie Paul.
You can come right up, the microphone should be on for you.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to comment tonight. And I'm just have a comment about technology and AI, the discussion we had last time. And there is a real concern as a taxpayer, and one of the board members asked, how will teachers discern whether the ChatGPT wrote the paper or the student? And that seemed to be a very concern with the board members. And obviously I think it's a concern with all of us. And so we don't know, right? So we don't have a solution for that. And I think, in my mind, we should instill in the students to obviously know right from wrong, so you don't plagiarize or take something that they shouldn't be using from the ChatGPT or whatever, AI or anything, and to think for themselves. Technology could be good, but it could also be detrimental. So I think way back, I'm probably older than most of you, if not the oldest one here, there were no calculators in school when I went to school, and then calculators came along, which, cool, you get your stuff done quick. But I think it took away from the understanding of math problems or how to figure things out for themselves. And maybe this has happened to you at a store. If I go into a store and pay cash, and say they ring it up and see the change that they need to give back, but then you say, oh, here's an extra dime or whatever to make it an even amount to give you back. They don't even know how to figure that out. And I'm not just saying students, it's like even me, okay, everybody. If it's not for Google Maps, I can't find my way from A to B, okay? I have lost the skill to read a map. So my husband could read a map, but I cannot. So I just think if we could try to instill in the students analytical thinking, and maybe that is in the classrooms, I don't know because I'm not in there. it just seems like students coming out today, and even in the 20-something group, they don't think for themselves unless you ask them to do something. For instance, on garbage day, the empty trash can is out there. The kid comes home from school, sees that empty trash can there, but doesn't bring it in. It's like, you walk by it every day, can you just please bring it in? I mean, I know it's a small ask, or small, no big deal. I could just do it, but it's helpful to have them do it. You know, it's like, oh, and then when you say that, oh yeah, sure, you know, it's okay. But they don't think to do that. And I think the technology is taken away from their individual thinking. So if there's any way that, I don't know, you guys could think of something to try to instill this kind of thinking into the classroom, and maybe instead of bringing in the technology like this, I know we can't get rid of it, but to just maybe have them think about how it can be detrimental in certain circumstances, and maybe give them examples of how it could be. You know what I mean? So I guess that's it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we are on 6A change orders. The above change orders have been reviewed by and are supported by architect Vic Tomaselli, project managers Gary Huffman and Jared Miller, clerk of the works George English, and assistant superintendent for business and finance Dr. Dan Driffill. Can I have a motion and a second that the change orders as described above be approved?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? The district is contracting with Sylvan Learning Center to provide supplemental educational services on behalf of Our Lady of Mercy. The contract is not to exceed $60,397.58 and will be paid through Title I funding. Can I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education authorizes the Superintendent of Schools to enter into a contract with Sylvan Learning Center on behalf of Our Lady of Mercy?
So moved.
Second.
Board members, questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Copies of the annual internal audit report by EFPR Group CPAs PLC for the year ending June 30th, 2023 have been provided to the Board of Education for review. Those persons responsible for areas covered by the audit have also received the report. Can I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education accepts the internal control audit for the control cycle ending June 30th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I please have a motion and a second that the annual external audit by Mengel Metzger, Barr and Company, LLP, Raymond F. Wagner, CPA, PC Division of the district's basic financial statements and the management letter for the year ending June 30th, 2023 be accepted, and further that the associated proposed corrective action be approved?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Whereas the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District seeks to dispose of district property which is of no further use for school district purposes. The property is located at 3021 Atlantic Avenue, Town of Penfield, County of Monroe, and State of New York, being tax map number 109.04-1-28, consisting of approximately 38.79 acres of vacant land, and whereas the cost of preserving and maintaining the property is excessive and diverts funds which could otherwise be used for school purposes, and whereas the Board of Education seeks to take steps to sell or otherwise transfer the above referenced property, and now therefore be it resolved as follows. The Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District hereby finds that the property located at 3021 Atlantic Avenue, Town of Penfield, is no longer of use or value to the district, and that the conveyance or disposition of the district's interest therein is in the best interest of the district. The Board of Education understands its fiduciary responsibility with respect to such property and will make any and all further decisions with respect to the property in accordance with applicable provisions of law and its fiduciary obligations thereunder. The superintendent and/or his designees are hereby directed to move forward with all steps necessary or appropriate to carry forward the intent of this resolution, subject to consultation with the school district's council and approval by the Board of Education. Can I have a motion and a second?
So
So- Second.
Board members, questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. We are on 8A, Audit Committee Charter. Can I please have a motion and a second that the Audit Committee Charter be approved as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. We are now on 9A, Monroe County School Board Association's committee meetings. We had two. We had Labor Relations and the Fall Law Conference. Mark, did you want to speak?
Certainly, thank you. So the Labor Relations meeting was a presentation about the RASH, which is the Rochester Area School Health Plans. That is of course our self-funded insurance, but that organization, of which we're not only members of, but we have representation in, also looked at what could be done for retirement insurance, Medicare insurance. And they were looking at the costs, and as they've been doing to try to reduce our normal costs for our normal employees, looking at the costs of retirement health insurance. So they put some RFPs out to different organizations to see if they could save money. They found that basically they selected Aetna as having the best overall cost. So this is really, again, where we're normally, with normal insurance, health insurance, we're self-insured. We do it, as a group, we pay for our own insurance, we pay our own costs. This is really more of a group buy. We're not being self-insured, we're picking a provider that can provide the best level of insurance, and we are getting that group purchase, that volume purchase. Now, there's more to it than just doing that, because there's a lot of steps involved in actually putting that in place for retirees, and that they're in that activity right now. But the main thing is for the organization, not just the district, for the organization, it could save $17 million over 3 years, of which we would have a pretty good percentage of that savings. The current provider provides it's a regional provider. And so if retirees move outside the area, which they tend to do, then they have problems. Then coverage in terms of finding providers, healthcare providers that are covered is a problem. Whereas Aetna is a national organization, and they say it's the largest Medicare carrier in New York, and it's the second largest in the U.S. So you have a much better national coverage, so retirees can do whatever they feel like doing and not worry about having healthcare coverage. And then there's also additional things such as the support, the call centers, the consulting is a higher level of providing, that was the right word, it's a higher level of service than we're getting today. So there's a lot of benefits. So, you know, again, this is something they proposed, is something that we're trying to work through as a district, as a member of RASP, and as, you know, overall county. So that is what they presented. Again, it is, you know, it's where we are.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments? All right, the fall law conference.
I attended the Fall Law Conference on behalf of the district, and this is an annual event that Monroe County School Board puts on. They bring in a number of attorneys, school attorneys that work with districts within Monroe County. So many of the attorneys that we have worked with and other districts have, and they do a presentation on basically legal updates and sort of the current and potential changing legal landscape for schools. And then it was really interesting. They brought in the one of the attorneys from New York State Education Department. So he was able to speak on sort of you know, decisions that have been made, court cases within schools that sort of course, lay the groundwork for you know, potential changes. It is, a lot of it was focused around especially around sort of DASA, supporting every single student, New York State's focus and support of that, making sure that all students feel safe, secure in school, and then sort of the laws that circle around that and the district's responsibility for that. So a lot, but again, a good conference represented by most districts, had at least somebody there across the county.
Awesome, thank you. District committees. We have Audit Committee, Christin or Krista.
I don't really have anything to add because
They covered everything. Yeah.
I feel like you're getting out of this. You
I
should-
do feel
like,
like
you
we're
shouldn't
getting
have,
out of the
because
report. But I just want to
they
make a
presented for you.
comment that I think this is probably the financial aspect of a school district is probably one of the most difficult aspects. There's so many layers to it, and I really appreciate Dan and his team and staying on top of everything and keeping us in the black.
Yeah, and I
Right,
will
yeah.
say, like, I think at the audit committee meeting, like, Tom does a really good job fielding Krista's and my questions because we tend to have a lot, and
I want to be
we
clear,
don't
it's
feel
Tom
like we're-
Zuber. Tom
yeah,
Zuber does
right,
not
not
know.
you.
Zuber.
Sorry.
I got- no,
yeah.
you're good.
Our-
I want to make
but
sure everyone knows.
I feel like
Not me.
we're heard, we're listened to, things
Yeah.
are clearly explained to us. Like, I don't have a $30 million budget in my household, let alone $117 million. So, like, it's really helpful that things are explained to us, and because it's a lot. It is the most complicated thing, I feel like, as a school board, even to wrap your brain
Yeah.
around. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
And I will remind community members that Dr. Driffill is always available to answer your money questions. He's shaking his head, yeah. Yeah. So feel free to reach out if anything is confusing or you don't understand something. Just reach out to Dr. Driffill and he will explain it. He's really good at that.
I agree.
All right, great. And then NISBA resolutions discussion, Mark?
Thank you. So the resolution packet this year contains 56 resolutions. And because of that, we will just go through some highlights. Unless there's any specific ones that you had a question on, I tried to just provide a synopsis of the resolutions and some of them. So I'll just cover a couple of them. One of the resolutions which I support was about opposing the shift of fiscal responsibility for preschool education from the counties to the school districts, which, again, we support that. I mean, preschool ages are outside of the mandated ages for that schools are required to provide education. So outside of the mandated ages generally means outside of the funded ages. And to make us be fiscally responsible for things, again, that we're not required to do is a sort of a conflict. So I would definitely support that resolution. And there were a number of resolutions around pre-K this year and different aspects of it. There was another one which was opposing legislation that would grant tenure status to non-instructional school employees, and I didn't really have an opinion on that because the rationale was that these staff are covered under civil service protection. So it's a little bit of the employment law that I think probably need to look into a little bit more before it comes to the business meeting. But at this point, I really couldn't make an opinion on that. Then there was one to improve safety by limiting the or reducing the unauthorized access to guns in schools, which we support. Now, the one thing that often there's resolutions around firearms, gun laws, and the like, and almost always they are not recommended by the committee, the resolutions committee, because it is something that is generally considered to be outside the purview of the school district. You know, we are part of the community, but there, you know, there are some areas where it's outside of this. But this was really about it was about on school, and so it was not talking. There was nothing in here talking about the access or restricting guns outside of school. You know, that are within people's constitutional rights. So just it was not impacting that. And then there was actually a mandate which I can support, which is and we don't like the state giving us mandates, but this one was a requirement that districts to have district supplied Narcan available at every school building. The current law allows us to have it, but doesn't require us. And I think it's kind of along the lines of, you could say, fire extinguishers or AEDs. You know, I think those things are, you know, at some point in time, they will be essential to saving the life of a student as something we should have. There was another one allowing state to have the state provide investments of support, and they called it the Grow Your Own Teaching Programs. Ultimately, what it is it's analogous to the trades. You know, we in school and with BOCES, we work to educate people in the trades, to promote the trades as a you know, very successful career. People that have successful careers in trades, that can be where they are the strongest, that can be the best choice. This is the same type thing, but it's for education. So it's to promote, you know, and I don't want to equate, you know, make any equates, but it's basically to promote that as a career, the kinds of things that we could do in high school for kids who have an interest in being in education, how providing funding to create programs to you know, to nurture that interest, whatever that might be. There was one for the state to conduct feasibility studies on the zero school vehicle mandate, and that's the basic electric bus mandate. Now, we all are excited about electric buses. I think we all like it. You know, the state has a long history of coming up with great ideas and great intentions, but a little bit short on the implementation, logistics, and impacts. And the school bus is one of those. Now, I think I would love to have all electric buses. We will go that way. You know, I think it's fortunate that with the transportation facility, we can design that in. But there's a lot of impact to that. And again, we're in a good position. There's a lot of schools that aren't in a good position. You know, they're rural schools that have low relative enrollment, lots of distances. You know, is this mandate, as it's written now, in the best interest for all school districts, or can it be modified? I don't say eliminated, but let's say modified to reduce the negative impact of school districts. There was let's see, one that was to replace the Regents exam testing in favor of state final exams. Wasn't really clear about what the difference between a Regents exam and a state final exam. I think that might be something that we can talk about again before I can get some information on before the business meeting where we vote on this. So what is really the impact of doing that? So again, I don't have an answer for that one. Let's see, I'm gonna, again, you can see the ones I hear. I'm gonna go to the one that is, let me skip ahead here. The one would allow school districts whose pre-K programs were oversubscribed to show enrollment preference of students who would be eligible for free and reduced price lunches and/or English language learners. Now, when we talk about equity, we talk about needs and helping everyone, doing things to make sure everyone achieves the maximum potential, and that effort is different for each student. And we've often recognized English language learners and kids who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, often need more resources and assistance. At the same time, pre-K is a developmental thing. And so what I'm concerned about that is that it doesn't really recognize the individual child and how much they need pre-K, right? Some kids, may be advanced and it's nice to have them be at pre-K, but is their developmental need as strong as other students who may be, maybe behind relative to their peers and can use that pre-K. So, I would rather, it's merit-based, but what's the merit? What's the appropriate merit? And that's the reason why I think that may not be, in this case, the best merit. So, again, if any of you, have thoughts on that, we certainly talk about it, because my vote represents what us as a board feels.
So just before you go on, so what's the question, whether?
So it's, if we have more students, and we have the lottery system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we have more families wanting to put their kids in pre-K than we have seats for, doing a preference based on English language learners and families that would be eligible for free reduced lunch, essentially, families that are financially disadvantaged. And, and that's, so the question is that would help those students, but is that at the expense of looking at students based upon need, based upon intellectual and developmental needs? So that's where I think it's not bad, but is it the right choice?
Well, the
Yeah, I
research
think when we
shows,
talk
I was
like
just
whole
gonna say,
child-
sorry, the research shows that it is, because those students tend to be, fall behind their peers. Especially English as a second language, or, based on the income, they have less access to things that other children might have that would help them and foster their learning. So the research supports that rationale.
And right, there could be a strong correlation in that they might be one and the same group, but that was the question I had. So again, we can discuss that. And then let's see. And then there was a few that were not recommended. Now, what happens is the resolutions that the committee doesn't recommend could be for a number of reasons. One, it could be a view of scope, that it's not really within our scope as a New York State School Board Association. Others are just they don't think it's a good idea, and we get a range of those. But there were two that I thought, or two sets that I thought were worth presenting here, even though they were not recommended. Two of them were kind of related, and they were advocating for the waivers and for the repealing of the zero emissions mandate, which goes back to the school bus issue, right? And basically recognizing this can impose an excessive hardship on some districts that are not as financially resilient as we are. I mean, we're in the sweet spot in terms of size, density, fiscal ability, that we can manage this. But this is something that's for all districts within New York State, and there's a lot of them, North Country, Southern Tier, and then urban districts. There's a lot of them that this might be, this mandate might be undue fiscal burden when they're already dealing with it. So how can we mitigate that? And then the other one opposes laws that would allow New York State to overrule local zoning ordinances. So I think there's a merit to that argument. Now, the explanation of the resolution, it doesn't really, the explanation of the resolutions committee, when they say why they oppose it, it didn't really say why they opposed it, other than they didn't felt it was a matter of relevance. Is this within our purview of of a school district talk about zoning. But zoning does affect density. It affects, if you change the zoning and you bring in a lot of high-density housing, that affects enrollment in the school district and the ability to staff, the ability to have space. So there is a relevance in my mind. So I think, I'm not sure if I agree with the reason why it was not recommended as being a relevance. Now, the issue is, should New York State be able to overrule local ordinances is a different opinion, and again, I think that goes back to local control type topics. So anyway, that one, I could see that one getting on there, because all it needs is a motion and a second, and that being debated, and as long as you don't run out of time or lose a quorum, I could see that one coming up and having a pretty robust debate. So, any questions or any of the other ones that you wanted to discuss?
Just get a little bit more explanation about the zoning that you just
Yeah.
talked about. So let's just say it again.
So again, they tried to make it a law I think this year or the past year, where New York State could overrule local communities on their zoning. They could say, we want to put in different kinds of zoning, and typically it's going to be more high density or
Multi-family dwellings.
multifamily dwellings, low-cost housing, and the state would decide what it will be and where it'll go, and they can overrule the community. Now, a lot of that is tied to, again, just access, right? And there's, again, good intents, as states good at good intents, but they're not really good at impact of implementation. So, that law didn't pass. I don't know if they'll try to pass it again this year in the legislature, or if it was if it just they're moving on. But this was basically say, we don't agree with it. Because, and from the perspective of the school boards, we don't agree with it because of the impact it has on schools in terms of sudden increases in school density and housing density, which means more students, sudden increase in enrollment, which again, we'd have to hire for, we'd have to have space for, overcrowded schools, those kinds of things.
Mark, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So where I, if I understand this correctly, that resolution would be about New York State being able to come in and unilaterally overrule a town's local zoning.
Correct.
Where I see it as a school board, that it's not coming in for a school. So it's an interesting resolution because it could have an impact on schools, sure, and I could see it both ways, but it really would be like, in our case, the town of Penfield being told by the state that they're going to change their zoning laws that the town of Penfield and our other towns that come to school work with. So it's not like, that's an interesting piece for, I can see that as sort of a conflict because it's not really us. Like, I wouldn't want the town, any town, to say, we're going to tell the school what you need to do.
Right.
Because we have a partnership, but it's an equal partnership. So it's an interesting one. It's not saying it doesn't change anything what school boards do, but it's the fact that they can change local zoning ordinances. And then, of course, the schools could be impacted by that.
And I think that's the essence of why they did not recommend it, because it is not school zoning.
Right.
It's town zoning, city zoning.
Yep.
Which is not us.
Right.
But,
But it could
so
make an
I think
effect.
that's where they said, not really relevant, it's really outside of our scope, and they didn't
Yes.
recommend it. But when we look at the direct impact is
Yep.
within our scope.
Yep. It's just interesting. I think that when I see those in terms of, we always look at, I think sometimes the resolutions in regards to, is it something that the school board controls, the district controls, and that one is very different because it's changing the town, and town ordinances, and there's other ways to change those, through town leadership and town board members, but so that was an interesting
It is,
one. I
yeah.
appreciate your explanation around it.
And, we will have the Area 2 discussion on it on Saturday. I'm going to be traveling, but I'm going to try to call. It's virtual, so if anyone wants to Zoom in, I'm going to try to Zoom in.
What time is it at, do you know?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what time it's at?
9 to 11, I think.
I just remember one more question, Mark.
Yes.
The school buses and some districts not having the means as much as others do. I thought they were all going to be state funded. The change over. No.
State aided, like, so it's aidability on buses, but not, it'd still be from local funds.
And again, state aid is not always, I mean, and in general, you know, like the foundation aids and all, it's not universal across all districts. Some districts get higher level of aid than others. So again, we talk about districts that you know, are less fiscally sound. They would probably get higher levels of aid than we get, you know,
But it's
like
still
the
just
normal.
aid, it's
But how that would affect the level of state aid get for a bus, it's not, the state's not going to buy the bus for them.
And it's not fully funded.
It's not fully, it's.
So it's eligible for New York State transportation aid. So it's a good ratio, typically, but it is with the electric buses, it's spread out over 12 years. So with the diesel buses currently and gas buses, we get aid over 5 years, so the money comes back faster. So you have a longer, you know, schedule. The other thing, like Mark's mentioning, is there's so many just diverse array of districts around the state that have different wealth profiles. You could have a community that has a ton of property wealth, like a lake community or something like that, where it might only be a few dozen houses that represent that property wealth, and then the income wealth in the community really can't afford a high tax burden. So there's close to 700 school districts. There are scenarios where it's going to be a fiscal challenge and then an operational challenge as well.
Yeah, the operational, when you think about, you know, I don't know how many miles a run would be, but like how long per charge that a bus could operate, yeah.
Yeah, some of those districts we see in the state are very, their student enrollment is low, but the miles in the district are very long.
Yeah.
So. And then like, you know, when you go up to North Country and it's, you know, the hills and you know, just that, you know, takes more energy.
And with the
right.
cold weather, the
Yeah.
buses could struggle,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
so.
I know, there's so much to think about.
But
and
they're
when-
really smart people talking about these things. I mean, people who have the time to think about all these scenarios, won't they?
Oh.
That's just part of it, yeah, I know.
But again, I think that the one thing to point out is, once we come up with these resolutions, this is where the New York State School Board Association, which is our organization, they're in Albany, and they help make sure that our wishes as a group are met, and they help educate our legislators as to why that we feel this way. You know, what are the impacts of the reason? Because again, the state, you know, the representatives are full of good intentions, but they don't know the details. I mean, I don't want to say they don't know the details and they're just glossing over it.
Yep.
But there will always be details that they don't quite know, no matter how much they educate themselves. And I think that's where our responsibility is, to help them understand it from our perspective. And that's what we do with the legislative committee. That's what we do with our trips to Albany, and that's what New York State School Board Association does, being in Albany.
I think it's important too, like for the community, and as you look at these, because Mark, you do an incredible job with this role and responsibility on the board. I'm in awe of it, but it's also this is really working. So all of this and whatever we want to go to the table with at the end of the day is what New York State School Boards approves to move forward, and even then it's really just their focus of advocacy. So even if we you know, if there's a disagreement of what it is, it doesn't mean that becomes law. It just becomes New York State's advocating. And so we find that's why Monroe County School Boards we work so closely with, because we do as a school board, and a superintendent who sits on there as well, we're a strong advocacy group. You know, Albany knows Monroe County School Boards because we have a very sort of robust program in terms of advocacy. And New York State's even more because it represents so many districts within the state. But the Penfield issues are very different than the lake communities or up in the Adirondacks, everybody, or down by the city. Very different concerns sometimes.
The other thing too, if I could, having that personal relationship that we have with Jen Lunsford, Assembly Member Jen Lunsford, and a little less so, but very visible, Summer Brook, and having those interactions and the accessibility. Jen Lunsford makes herself very accessible to our district, and so that interactive is really important. You know, it's a two-way advocacy, especially with her, and I think Summer Brook is very responsive as well. But that
just having that ability to have this discussion and then being able to take it to somebody who you personally know and is advocating for her constituents with our information in mind, it's very valuable.
Yeah.
And it's a very, I think, a very important thing to keep going and to nurture.
Mhm.
Because this is, I think, one of the best examples is we all want electric buses. We are all concerned about the environment. And then there's the logistics.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you, Mark. No unfinished business, any new business?
I had a quick comment.
Sure.
You were talking about the custodians, and there was something else. Oh, just about the financial aspect of running a school district. And I just wanted to say, I get a kick out of my own memories when my kids were going to school here, because I used to worry about, do you have your lunch? Do you have your sneakers? Do you have your gym clothes? Do you remember your homework? All that. That's all I worried about. I didn't think anything about custodians. I didn't think anything about budgets. I didn't think anything about the nurses or anything. That was my focus. I had 3 kids. They were close in age and busy, busy, busy. But I always had the trust that everything was under control and everything, that the school was going to be clean, that the nurse was going to be there, that the teachers were going to show up, and it was going to run. So I just think it's important as we're doing these special, focus. I just think it's important to reiterate that there is so much that goes on. As the kids are running out the door, making sure that they have all the things they need to have a good day. And there's just so much behind the scenes that we don't actually take for granted per se. We trust that it's there, but it's not in our minds. And so I think it's great to be able to point it out.
And we talk about a lot, and it's cliche, but the Team Penfield piece, because it takes every single member of this district, all staff, to do their part, right? If one subsection decided not to do it or didn't show up or God forbid wasn't here,
Right.
Things really start to get hard. So it really is, it's everybody working together to make it happen. It's like running a city. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
amount of square footage we have and heating bills and everything else that goes into it. It's a lot. So I appreciate that, and we'll share that with staff as well in terms
Yeah.
of all the work that takes place.
It's amazing. It's
Yep.
amazing. Yeah.
And today was taco in a bag for elementary school, so it was very, without our amazing lunch staff as well, that would not happen.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
See, there's so much to it.
There is.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay. All right, can I have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 8:04 p.m.?
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed.